Now on the line is our next guest. He's a former Strikeforce middleweight champion and is fighting Rousimar Palhares at World Series of Fighting 22, August 1st. Jake Shields, welcome back to Submission Radio.
Thanks. How you guys doing?
Yeah, doing great, doing great. It's good to have you back on the show, Jake. Before we talk about your big fight, you had a great performance against Brian Foster in January. What's Jake Shields been up to since your last fight?
After the fight, took a little break, did a little bit of traveling, and then right back to training. Help my training partners get ready, and been doing a lot of jiu-jitsu, and then started my training camp for this fight.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Now, Jake, before we get into your fight on August 1st, the welterweight division had an all-time classic at UFC 189 with Robbie Lawler versus Rory MacDonald. Just wanted to get your thoughts on the fight and your thought of the performance from both fighters.
Oh, I thought it was a great fight. That was a good back-and-forth fight. That was really close. I actually had Rory a little bit ahead going into the fourth round, and then it was a fourth or fifth. I think it was fourth round, and Robbie just brought the pressure up and knocked him out. Did a great performance.
Yeah, it was a crazy fight. Now, the interesting thing is you, of course, submitted and beat Robbie Lawler back in your Strikeforce debut. Does a part of you wish now that, obviously, he's the UFC champion, that you could have another crack at him? And, how would you see that fight playing out if you guys had a rematch?
Yeah, I would love to fight Robbie. He's a guy, I've always had a lot of respect for. I beat him in the past, and, of course, I think I'd beat him again. It'd be a tough fight. I think he has improved a lot. I think I have as well.
No, absolutely. I mean, you beat Duran, Woodley, Damian Maya, which are the guys at the top of your division in the welterweight in the world, but also in the UFC. What were your thoughts when you found out your previous opponent, Hector Lombard, tested positive for PEDs, since that was the loss that sort of got you cut from the UFC?
I mean, I don't think anyone's really surprised. I think it was kind of a given. It was just a matter of if he was going to, get caught or not.
Well, moving back to your fight, to World Series of Fighting, this fight with Rousimar will mark your third fight with World Series of Fighting. Just curious, how's your experience been with the company so far?
It's been good. I have 2 fights with them. It's gone really well. It's treated me good. So far, everything is going good.
World Series of Fighting's been trying to do some cool things, and Ray Seffer is a legend, a great guy. But at this stage of your career, do you wish you had the ability to fight more? Because World Series of Fighting, the only criticism that we had about the company from other fighters is there's just not as many fight cards to be on and not as many fights per year to have.
Yeah, for me, it hasn't been a problem. And I've wanted to fight. They've gotten me fights, so it's been great. I have heard guys complain about that. Luckily, I haven't had that problem. Hopefully that's something they won't run into.
Now, let's talk about your training for the fight. How's the preparation been going now that we're zeroing in and the fight's coming around the corner? And how much of your camp has been dedicated to defending leg locks?
Training's gone great. This camp went really well. I mean, I pushed really hard, had good training partners, and the majority of the camp's been the same. 90% of the same as any fight. I have sat back and focused, studied leg locks a little better, and went and trained with some leg lock guys, and I feel really confident right now.
You worked with some really good guys in New York. One of them, Renzo, Gracie, also John Danaher. Why the decision to go up to New York? Why did this decision to prepare for your fight over there? Is it because of the advanced grappling teachers over there, Jake?
Yeah, I stopped by New York and I, dropped into Renzo, Gracie's, and then I trained with John. I don't know, 6 months ago or something. The guy was just, I thought he was an amazing teacher. The way he broke things down were amazing. I trained with guys, all kinds of good leg lock guys like, Eddie Cummings. Terry telling me these guys are really top notch and knew how to attack the legs. So I figured it'd be a good idea to go out there for a couple weeks and train them with them.
Sure. You've been a lifelong American Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, but having a BJJ in your corner like Renzo Gracie and then, of course, the great John Danaher, does that fill you with even more confidence going into this fight?
Yeah, I mean, not bringing these guys out, but just, having gone and focused with someone like John who has such high-level leg locks really added some confidence.
I mean, you mentioned how hard you've been working at jiu-jitsu, and you're notorious for your ground game. So is Rousimar. Will you be looking to take this fight to the ground, or do you expect that maybe your grappling will cancel each other out and this will be a striking affair?
That's really hard to say. I've worked all aspects of this fight. I've worked a lot of boxing, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, so I'm prepared for wherever the fight will go.
Well, let me ask you this, Jake. Obviously, you've been training for everything. Do you think that if Rousimar can't get into a position where he can work for a leg lock, you'll essentially hold all the advantages in the fight?
Yeah, I think I will. I mean, he's not a guy I want to underestimate. He does have other weapons. I mean, he's big, strong, so he has power. You got to watch that. He's got good takedowns. So I don't want to underestimate everything besides his leg locks. That's definitely the main thing I'm worried about.
Now, Jake, Rousimar Palhares, he's been very successful since entering World Series of Fighting. You mentioned in a recent interview that he deserves to get hurt. Can you explain to us, why do you feel that way about him?
I think he's a guy who enjoys hurting people. He's got a reputation for hurting people in training, rolling people in jiu-jitsu tournaments. for hurting people in fights. He likes to hold the submission too long and try to break bones. So it'd be nice to, break one of his bones in return.
I think one of the worst ones was obviously in UFC against Mike Pierce, and that was the one that got him cut from the company. When he fights, everybody's looking at those leg locks under a microscope. Looking at his last couple of fights against John Fitch and Steve Carl, in your opinion, do you think he held onto the leg locks too long there?
Maybe slightly. It's gray areas, so it is tricky, those ones. I mean, the Mike Pierce is a clear case of holding it too long. The Fitch one is kind of borderline.
It's interesting because Rousimar does have a language barrier, doesn't speak English very well. Do you think there's any chance that he might be misunderstood in the world of MMA and has been made to portray a much worse person than he really is? Or do you think it's just him injuring guys is no coincidence?
I think there's, two options. I think he's a really bad person who's always hurting people, or he's really stupid. There's no way that he just, you'd have to be really stupid to not understand that you're holding the submission too long. We're submission guys. We train all the time. We're used to people tapping in training. He's known for hurting people in training as well. So.
You've been very vocal leading up into this fight. Let's ask you this: do you think that maybe if you were to hypothetically get Palhares in a submission and injure him, he may learn something from it, maybe get a better understanding of what some of his previous leg locks have done to his opponents?
I'm planning on not letting him get me those leg locks. I don't want anywhere near that, so I'm gonna stay away. And if he tries getting one, I'll break a lot of myself, so I'm willing to attack his legs as well.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like, let's say you get him in one.
Oh, yeah, I've been studying. Yeah, I've worked a lot of leg locks myself. I would love to catch him and get him one of his own heel hooks.
But do you think maybe, like, if... I'm not saying you would have held it on too long or anything like that, but let's say you get a knee bar, something was to happen. Do you think maybe you would, I don't know, almost be like a lesson to Rousimar and he would sort of understand a bit better?
Yeah, if I grab it, I'm going to try to break it. Obviously, if he taps, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to risk getting suspended over something stupid like that, but I'm definitely going to grab it and try to rip anything I get.
GSP, Anderson Silva, Dan Henderson, and many others are some of the previous opponents that you've had. We've never really seen you engage in much trash talk, always a chilled out guy. Would you say this is your most personal fight to date in your career, Jake?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I guess I haven't really had problems with many guys I fought. I had a little feud going with Mayhem Miller, but that was more after we fought. Yeah. So I guess when I fought him, I had nothing against him. So yeah, I guess it's maybe the guy that I've liked the least amount that I'm fighting.
You never know. Mayhem might storm the cage after this fight. You just never know. Now,
Mayhem might show up and want his rematch. He never did get his rematch.
Exactly. Where's his rematch? Now, you and Rousimar, you guys aren't exactly friends or fond of each other, and you've had a very long career, fought some of the best, like we mentioned previously. A lot of fighters we have on the show talk about hitting that point in their career where they just lose the fire and that passion. Have you ever had that moment in your career, and has training for a guy like Palhares, who clearly you don't really like, made it easy to find that spark?
Yeah, definitely. I've had some moments in my career where I was burnt out, part of the time in the UFC where I kind of really lost the love for it. And, I was still training and still, beating good guys, but just made me feel like I didn't love the sport as much. But, I think being out of UFC, being a World Series of fighting, I've kind of got the passion back. My last two fights were, quick first-round finishes. I got the motivation to go out there and try to put people away again, and I have that right now. I want to go out there and beat Palhares, and not just beat him. I want to finish him within the first 3 rounds.
Absolutely. Now, also, big fight, lots of stakes on the line, the world title, the World Series of Fighter welterweight title on the line. How does it feel to be in a position to win the title again, Jake, and how important is it for you to win that championship?
Great. I've had, I think, 5 world titles, so it's nice. Got 6, and it's, ultimately I'm looking for the fights, but it still is really cool to get a title and be the champ.
Given that that's obviously the main focus going into this fight, to become world champion again, let me ask you this though. I think you're pegged as one of the favorites compared to Palhares' last few opponents to actually win and not get caught in a leg lock. Do you feel like if you do win, to a degree, you're sort of avenging some of his previous opponents that were injured in that process?
I didn't really look at it that way, but I'm sure some of them would like to see me win, especially if I hurt them. Captain
Jake to the rescue.
Now, Jake, we let the fans know you were coming onto the program. We've got a few fan questions here that we're going to ask you. We just picked a couple because you're low on time. So the first one comes from Snake. He wants to know, over the last few days, Stitch was let go from the UFC. As someone who's worked with the guy before, what were your thoughts on the release?
I was shocked. I think Stitch is, I don't know. They have all the comments are good, but Stitch is my favorite. I've worked with him a lot of times. He always grabs my hand. He's been in my corner almost all my fights in the UFC. He's my favorite cut man, and everyone likes him in and out of the cage. So to see that happen over, saying such a small thing, I mean, I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was just a minor, very, very minor criticism to be fired over that, and I guess Dana didn't even call himself. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's very weird. He didn't really he didn't bag out the company. It was a very cordial interview, it seemed. But anyway, it's one of those things. Next fan question is from the Premier Derriere. Just wants to know, and this one will help because obviously you're good friends with Gilbert Melendez, one of the guys part of the Scrap Pack, as are the Diaz brothers. His question is, what are your thoughts on the UFC uniforms and the Reebok misspelling your friend Gilbert Melendez's name? I believe it was Giblet Melendez.
I mean, I don't think the uniforms are that bad. I think the whole deal is bad. It hurts the fighters, but I mean, the uniforms are not terrible. And yeah, the thing with the Reebok thing, it was just comical, all the errors they had for such a big professional company. It's really, I mean, I have nothing against Reebok. I think they're a great company, but I think that was very embarrassing and not a good thing when they're already having issues with the MMA world accepting them.
Absolutely. A bit of spell check would help as well. Last fan question here from Giant Killer. Your good friend Nick Diaz has been going through some issues, most recently having to take a plea deal for DUI. Do you see him returning to fighting again in the future? And how has he been able to handle this whole situation? He must have had an incredibly frustrating year thus far.
Yeah, I mean, as far as Nick returning, I think he will for the big fights. He's already done a lot in the sport, and he only wants to fight for big name fights. So for the right fight, I think he'll return. And, I think he's having some problems this year, but he's also been really enjoying his life. No, it's been that bad. I think Nick's actually been, happier than ever. He's been, going out. He seems like he's been in really good moods every time I see him.
It's good. It's good that he's happy. As a fan, I hope he comes back, though. We're going to round out the interview.
No, I'd love to see him back, too. But it's just good. Yeah, exactly. It's good to see him not having fun. So.
Yeah, of course. We're going to round out the interview, Jake, and then we're going to let you go with the Submission Radio tap-out round. We're just going to ask a bunch of random fun questions, and then you answer with the first thing that comes to your mind, kind of like word association. So the first one would be, you've been training with John Danaher. Describe John in one sentence. What was it like working with a grappling genius?
The guy's a mad genius, He's definitely a genius in jiu-jitsu. A little crazy, but love the guy.
He looks crazy.
He's like the Riddler of jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I think if he was a Batman villain, he'd be like the Riddler. He's very, very smart. Now, next question, Nate Diaz versus...
Yeah, he's like an evil villain.
Yeah. He looks like a James Bond villain.
Exactly.
Nate Diaz versus Conor McGregor. How does that fight play out?
I mean, I think Diaz would take him apart. I think it's a terrible matchup for Conor. I think... Nate's reach, his output, his jiu-jitsu's better. I mean, obviously you don't want to count Conor out. He's really good stand-up. I think Nate picks him apart.
Interesting. Now, training with Matt Serra, were you at any point whisked away to any vegetarian pizza or pasta places during a training?
He dragged me to some pasta Italian place, so I got snuck off right after training.
How was it?
Oh, it was really good. He obviously knows where to eat.
Yeah.
The Italians.
Oh, man, that's hilarious. Now, we saw you with the token white guy at Coachella a few months back. How was the experience, and who was your favorite act?
Coachella was awesome. That was my third year going. It's one of my favorite festivals. A lot of fun. And favorite act, I can't remember what stood out this year, but the whole festival was just a blast.
Who were the headliners this year?
Yeah, I don't remember. Good question. The lineup, the music actually wasn't that great this year. This was the worst music out of all the years. I wasn't that impressed with the lineup, but it's just it's still a great feel, great vibe, a lot of after parties, pre-parties.
You were just going to the parties, not even watching.
Jake was all over the place, doesn't remember anything.
I definitely was. The music was underwhelming this year. I wasn't that happy with the music, but the festival was still a lot of fun.
Now, you love traveling and hiking. What's your favorite place that you travel to?
That's a tough question because, there's so many cool places, but a couple places stand out, Thailand, Bali. I was just in Turkey. That was surprisingly really cool. But just still, I just love going and exploring new places.
We saw you saw a place with some cave houses. I don't know if you got a chance to go in, but what's it like being inside a cave house?
Oh, that was really cool. That was that place that you're thinking that, Cappadocia is that town. There's these cave houses everywhere. All these caves were built into the, they used to spend the ancient cities. You can just go explore them by yourself with no tour guides and stuff. It's really cool.
Wow. Yeah, definitely no cave houses in San Francisco. Now, as a vegetarian...
No, none of those here.
Imagine if your neighbors were in a cave house. That'd be pretty weird. Yeah. As a vegetarian, what's your number one guilty pleasure that you can't stay away from?
I love, let's see, pizza's good. It's not good for you. My favorite food is probably the California. The burritos out here are just amazing. But they're not that bad as good vegetarian burritos. As long as they, don't get too much cheese and stuff on them.
Yeah. Now,
Jake, we know that you love taking your daughter to Pitch Perfect. You talked about this last time. when you were on the program. You even enjoyed it. So we have to ask you, did you enjoy Pitch Perfect 2? And you have to give us a star rating.
Yeah, I actually did not see Pitch Perfect 2. When that came out, I was out of town. I think I was in New York or something. So
Come on, man. Priorities. Forget about training.
I got there.
Forget about training.
So I wasn't that bummed that she beat me and saw it without me.
Yeah, well, first thing, assuming you win that belt at World Series of Fighting, you got to go see Pitch Perfect 2. Now, the final question before we let you go, what's the official prediction? How are you beating Rousimar Palhares on August 1st at World Series of Fighting 22?
Man, that's always tough. Always a tough question. But I guess I'll say second round TKO.
All right.
Guys, you can catch Jake fighting for the World Series of Fighting welterweight title on August 1st at WSOF 22. And make sure to follow him on Twitter. The guy's like the Bear Grylls of MMA. Check him out. He's always putting up cool photos at Jake Shields, AJJ. Jake, thank you very much for being on the program.
Great. Thanks a lot, guys.